Welcome to the Tyler Turner Show. Today's date, February 1st, 2021. If you haven't yet, please subscribe in all our channels, YouTube, on Periscope, iTunes. If you are on iTunes, please leave a review. That'll be awesome. Visit us at thesportscast.net. Also follow us on Twitter at SportsCast1. And check out our app at the Sportscast in the iOS App Store. Okay, I'm back here another week. I have another guest today working for Sports Pac-12, Jack Fullman. I came across his information. He did a way too early 2021 top 25. He also did a preseason, a 14 preseason for the Pac-12. How are you doing today, Jack?
Great.
So yeah, let's kind of like boy back and forth off these subject lines. First and foremost, what was quickly, because I've covered it a lot last week and a couple of my shows before that, what was your thoughts on this 2020 season in the Pac-12?
Man, it was as you expected going in. It was a weird season, and I think you normalized things as they happened, because you got to remember we were like, how late were we? And we were like, we didn't think there was going to be a season, and then we got one, and it was strange. We had some teams I think played as much as 7 or 8 games, and he had teams that played 3 or 4. It was weird, and it was hard to read too much into it, in my opinion, in some ways. But then you got to read something into it because you're like, well, this was what we got, and it was fun. I think we also hit a point too where we were just like, we're going to get Pac-12 football when it felt like it was taken away from us for so long. You really had to appreciate what you got, no matter how weird and how unpredictable it was, because you didn't know if you were going to get a game until it kicked off. That was another exciting part, but not in a good way.
Yeah, I think it was kind of the same sentiment I had when I talked to my guest last week, and sentiments on my shows I've done just solo. I just thought it was such a small sample size that, you see online people bickering of, oh, my team was Washington, we're 3-1 and we won our division. But it's like you played 4 games, and Arizona State played 4 games, and Washington State played 4 games. I just thought there was such a small sample size for so many teams that it really was like extremely difficult to pull a lot of data from this and be like, oh, this team is substantially good. Or, I mean, Arizona's bad. But other than that, I mean, even like Colorado, like, were they really good? I don't know. Last 2 games, they didn't look very good. So I just thought it was one of those seasons that it was just kind of difficult to like glean a ton out of it. And I guess there was a champion, but the champion didn't win their division. It was weird. And so, yeah, I kind of same sentiment as you. It was glad that there was something, but to glean a lot of absolutes from it, I think is darn near impossible. Now, moving forwards into next season, one point, I was looking at SP Plus by Bill Connolly. I don't know if you know him. He works for ESPN.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When he talks about returning production for teams next year, one thing that really popped out to me, nationally, so we have UCLA is number 2 in returning production. Washington State is 5th. Oregon State 7th. Utah 8th. Oregon 9. Arizona State 11. Colorado 12. Washington 15. Cal 20. In the top 20 of returning production, you have 9 Pac-12 teams. So, one blessing in disguise or something that you would not expect to take away, but I guess it does make sense. And since only some teams played 4, 5, 6 games, the Pac-12 returns a lot next year. Most of these teams come back pretty much intact. And like I said, of all the teams in college football, the Pac-12 returns the most production of any conference by a significant margin. Is that kind of what you gleaned, and is that kind of what you expected, especially since they played so few games?
Yeah, definitely. To me, it seems like USC is the only team that's really losing much. And
50. Stanford is 111.
Stanford's the other one, but I kind of feel like they're the teams that are really a factor up top. I think USC was the big one, and other than that, that's totally what I see is looking at forecasting next season. You're like, other than USC, I think kind of sliding back a bit, it looks like the same teams that were in contention last year, kind of in the same slots. Same thing. As you said, we know Arizona's not good. I have a sneaking suspicion Colorado or WSU might not be as good as some of those other teams, but yeah, you look at Oregon, Washington, Utah, UCLA is kind of a sneaky team, I think. Even those teams like Oregon State could sneak up on people the way they did this year, and not Arizona, Arizona State has some potential too. So yeah, it's going to be pretty similar. It's almost like we got like a practice season for the most part, unless you're really USC or Stanford, and even Stanford, I think, kind of has like a little bit of the guys they're losing. I don't think they lost experience, but I don't think it's like they're losing like USC, where you're like, USC is losing a lot of really good players who made a big impact.
Yeah, when I was talking about my projections next year, USC was the one, because I'm seeing them in some not too early polls. I think ESPN had them 9. I think 247 Sports had them like 12. And I was like, I don't see that for USC next year, especially since Clay Helton has not always achieved the true potential with the talent on the roster. With them losing so much production, I could definitely see, and I don't know if you think the same, I forgot what you had them in there way too early, but I could definitely see USC being a 7-5 team next year.
Yeah, I definitely had them as kind of like around number 20. And I don't have that much confidence in them. I think that a lot of that has to do with how much nationally, when you look at the rosters, as you said, and you're like, there's a lot of teams that just are restarting, unlike the Pac-12. And I think they're getting a lot of pull for Kadon Slovis, but he threw away the Pac-12 championship the last time we watched him play. I don't know if he'd really put that much, and that was with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Tyler Vaughns and a couple other players on his offensive line that are going to the NFL. So yeah, I don't know where the confidence for USC is really coming from. And Talanoa Hufanga, who is like literally their whole defense, is and one of those guys who you see sometimes where he just literally completely changes the defense. He's not like a guy who just plugs in. So yeah, I don't have much confidence in USC, especially because Clay Helton's coaching. This isn't like a place where you don't have Urban Meyer or Nick Saban, reloading up there. It's Clay Helton. So big question mark. Again, it's USC, so they have talent. They're not like, like a team that build it up and is going to have to completely rebuild, but they're not. I have some skepticism about USC.
Since you touched on the subject, well, you didn't touch on the subject, but you mentioned his name. What would you say, so Kedon Slovis, returning quarterback for the USC Trojans, what would you say overall about the quarterback position entering next season in the Pac-12? So if we were going to specifically address that position, what is your opinion right now of the quarterback position?
Yeah, it's a wild card. It was, I think, coming into last year when you kind of had a changing of the guard with guys like Justin Herbert taken off. It's kind of like this year was a lot of guys to proving time, and not that many guys stepped up. I mean, I think when you looked at all Pac-12, I think Slovis got a lot of he had a lot of accolades, but it was kind of because no one else really was that great. And I mean, that was before the Pac-12 championship game, I think, a lot. And he just did not look good. He might have been hurt. I'm not sure. It's a question mark. And you have a lot of places like Oregon, too, where it's like you don't know who might be the starter. Stanford, Davis Mills, who I actually quietly thought might have been the best quarterback in the Pac-12 last year, kind of shockingly left for the NFL. I didn't expect that. Then you had guys like Jaden Daniels and Chase Garbers, who I don't think were as good as people expected them to be. So it is massive question mark. You have a place like Utah where I don't think have any idea who's going to be the starter. It's wild. Slovis should clearly be the number one guy going in, I think, despite his struggles. But other than that, there's a lot of question marks.
Yeah, I'd agree. This is how I'd preface it. I would say there is a lot of question marks. I did not think it was in the short, weird season that it was. I didn't think the quarterback play was very good. But when I look at the quarterbacks that could be starting, UCLA, it's probably Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He will be a 3-year starter. Washington State, you had Jane DeLaura. He did look good in the little tiny bit that he played. Oregon State, I believe it'll be Tristan Gebbia. I have questions about him. Utah, I believe it'll be Charlie Brewer, the transfer from Baylor. Maybe Jadarius Jackson from Texas. He was a top 100 guy coming out. He's a guy that you could look for. Oregon, that's interesting. Tyler Shuck did not look necessarily very good. He was pretty inconsistent. Anthony Brown, who was a 2-year starter at Boston College, he came in and played at the end of the year. I thought looked a little better. But then they signed Ty Thompson, who's a top 50 player. He's a 5-star by Rivals.com. He could be in the mix. I'm going to go Brown, Anthony Brown. He's a 5th-year senior. He started a couple of years. I believe he'll win it. We'll see. Arizona State, I go Jaden Daniels. I personally think he's a little overrated. His freshman year, he had some moments where he looked good, but he also had some moments where he's a pretty inconsistent passer. And remember, he had some really good receivers like Brandon Ayuk and Frank Darby. So the fact that he didn't really improve and you saw maybe that he didn't quite have those weapons on the outside, I don't know. I think the jury's a little more out. I think he definitely got hyped up because of that big victory he had over Oregon, and he had a very impressive performance. But I haven't seen the consistency with him as a passer to say that he's that guy in the Pac-12. Colorado, I believe it'll be Sam Neuer. Washington is another team. I wasn't particularly impressed with Dylan Morris. I wasn't impressed. I never thought he was that great. I thought he was a slightly overrated prospect, but they are bringing in Sam Heward, a 5-star, and he was a tremendous prospect. I would not be shocked if Sam Heward's a starting quarterback. Cal, Chase Garbers, he's another guy that I think he's a little bit limited as an overall quarterback. And then Arizona, who is Arizona? Who is Arizona's quarterback?
Well,
do you know?
Gunnell transferred out, I think. Grant Gunnell, who
Yeah.
looked all right. He looked pretty good at times, but so I assume I wouldn't be surprised if they bring in some sort of transfer.
They brought in the Cruz. Gunnar Cruz from Washington State did transfer in there. So is that the starter probably?
Probably. Yeah.
Okay.
It's hard to track with transfers now sometimes. You were like, it'll be some transfer, but we don't know yet.
They might even get another one. USC will be Keaton Slovis. I actually love Jackson Dart. He's a top 50 guy that they signed. I think he's going to be a very good quarterback for them. Kid out of Utah. Miller Moss is a top 100 guy. So I think they have some good freshmen. I think he'll be Slovis. I'm kind of in the ballpark with you. I think Slovis is kind of overrated. He's had some pretty bad performances when he's played against better teams. His freshman year, he had a really poor performance against Oregon and a bad loss. He had a poor performance against Iowa until he got injured in the Holiday Bowl. He did not play well this year against Oregon. He really didn't play very well against Arizona State to open the year. I just think when it's better, when he's facing a little better talent, he can make some mistakes. Sorry, I really am not buying USC, as you can tell right now. And they would need really good play from Keaton Slovis. Has some great receivers. We'll see what they can do. Stanford, I think it'll be Tanner McGee, former top 50 guy, went on a Mormon mission, came back. But there's some talent. If I were going to pick the dark horse, in my opinion, I actually really like Jane DeLora. I think he also has a system under Rolovich that is very favorable for good quarterback performance. It gets the ball out quick. It's a run and shoot style quarterback system, offensive system. So it's very effective for a quarterback to put up good numbers. So maybe Jaden DeLora is someone that I kind of like Charlie Brewer going from Baylor. I think he's a solid quarterback going into Utah. Utah's always going to be well-disciplined. They're going to do just the little things well. They're going to run the ball well, protect the quarterback well, put their quarterback in good position. So he's a guy. And then the Oregon quarterback's just going to have I can show you at some point, but I do like this talent formula, similar to the 247 team talent composite. Oregon is going to have the best roster based upon talent this year in the Pac-12. They're going to have a top 10 roster nationally. So just the fact that he's going to have so many on the offensive side of the ball, he's bringing back guys that are 3-4 year starters. And then there's like 3 or 4 top 100 guys that are either freshmen or sophomores. I just think there's going to be a lot of talent at the disposal and whoever's a quarterback. I just don't know who it's going to be. Who's your leading candidate to be a quarterback at Oregon next year?
Man, that's going to be an interesting one because, you take someone like Anthony Brown, who I agree, I think did look better when you put him in there over Shuck. I like that, but then, you got to play bigger picture too of like, he's at most, you're going to get one more year out of him. Where do you invest in a guy like Thompson and say, hey, he might not be quite as polished. You might lose a game or two that you would win with a veteran like Brown. But you get that development out of a guy and you kind of build your team up around him. So I think it's either going to be Brown or it's going to be Thompson. And they're either going to be like, hey, we're going to commit to, see what we can do this year. Maybe I think we were the schedule, like they think they play at Ohio State next year. So maybe you throw Brown out there against Ohio State. And if you win or you look really good and you say, hey, we're going to ride this season out with him and see the best we could do. But if they lose or they lose that game and you're like, well, let's see what we can do with Thompson. If I had to bet, I would say probably Brown, just because, as you said, I think too, they have a roster built to win the conference. So you might as well try to do that as opposed to, really bank on a rebuild when, especially have a true freshman coming in, you can redshirt him, maybe even get him in a few games and still redshirt him with the new rules. That would probably be the best bet.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I think if it was a roster, probably only a couple rosters that really could compete in the Pac-12 on the national level and for possible playoff, and Oregon's one of them going into next season. If you look at the data that exploit the data from recent college football playoff contestants, they're the only USC and Oregon's going to have the roster talent that really would be the baseline kind of for the mean in recent seasons. And I just think with that possibility out there, I think you play the more experienced guy. But if you were, for instance, Cal, or you were Colorado, I'd play Thompson because it's the future you're building for. But if just because they have a team that could make the playoff, definitely win the conference. I'd play Brown because he's going to be experienced. I mean, he's basically a 6-year senior. I mean, can't get much more experience than that. That's the funny thing. Okay, so we touched on quarterbacks. I think we're both we seem to be on the same thought pattern. Probably Slovis is but I think we both realize that he didn't at times has not really lived up to what his possible potential would be. So the next position, I guess I'd see how I do this. I just do the pass catchers, do wide receivers and tight ends together. How do you see that across the board? What guys do you see standing out? Which teams do you think probably has the most impactful guys at that position?
Yeah, it's not a strong year this year. Looking ahead, kind of when I was doing those all Pac-12 teams for next year. I mean, you lost USC, was clearly they had a nice group last year, and they still have some nice pieces coming back. And Drake London and Brew McCoy, and they have some young talent in there. I know Gary Bryant Jr. is a guy who might step up. So I think USC still kind of has it, but it's wide open. There's not that many difference, I think, between a lot of between the top group and the bottom group. I mean, there's not a whole lot proven at receiver or tight end in the conference at all. I mean, you look at even the groups that Utah has a nice combo and Britton Covey, who, speaking of guys who've been in the conference forever, and they have Brant Kuithe at tight end. That's a nice combo there, but you're really stringing together not a whole lot to really put out there in any of these teams. I like Stanford. Again, I was excited about Stanford. I thought Simi Fehoko showed a lot. I like Michael Wilson, but then Simi Fehoko leaves for the NFL. WSU's got that same group of guys that they have that they've kind of the guys who put up stats, but you're like, how good are these players? Oregon's got a lot of young, talented guys that they're bringing in that they're kind of, then they have the veteran guys who've been there for a long time, like the Johnny Johnsons, the Jalen Reds, but you'd really want those younger guys to have to step up and be the go-to guys there. So, but we just haven't seen that. Same with Washington. They're kind of a similar thing where you've seen the young, bigger recruits who haven't really done it. So I guess USC by default, because I'm not really in love with anyone's pass catchers.
Yeah. Well, for tight end, I like Cade Otton. I think he's a very good, and I like Brent Keefe Cade Otton from Washington, Brent Keefe from Utah, and Greg Dulcich from
Good tight end.
UCLA.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a good point. There's
so I
those
think
three guys. Yeah.
yeah, I think those are three legitimate. Those guys could, I mean, first, second, third team. I mean, I think they're three legitimate guys. They'll probably play on Sundays. I think that's a solid group at the tight end position. I do kind of agree with you. I think there is some with wide receiver. I think there's some guys with potential. Brew McCoy, a former 5-star, he has the potential. Troy Franklin for Oregon, he has the potential. Puka Nacua, if he can stay healthy for Washington. Jalen McMillan, he's in his second year. Johnny Wilson for Arizona State. Bunkley Shelton, I forget his first name, from Arizona State. There are some guys that Elijah Badger, he's another guy for Arizona State. There are some guys that are high-rated recruits, but I guess we just haven't seen them. So if they can play to their potential, if they can play to what the recruiting gurus and the recruiting experts gave them for a rating, I think you could have a really nice wide receiver group in the Pac-12. Because of guys coming back, Kyle Phillips, Drake London, Raynard Bill from Washington State, Travell Harris from Washington State, Dimitri Stanley from Colorado, Rice, Jerry Rice's kid, Brendan Rice from Colorado, Ricky Pearsall from Arizona State, Britton Covey from Utah, Jalen Red, Johnny Johnson and Micah Pittman also from Oregon. But I think there's a little bit of ceiling on those guys. I don't think those guys are guys that are going to be playing on the next level for the most part, or if they are, they're going to be like undrafted free agents. I think for the wide receiver group to take that next step to have some really elite wide receiver groups, you're going to have to need the Brew McCoys, Jalen McMillans, Puka Nacuas, Devin Williams. Those are the guys that top 50 5-star rated guys that I think could have the ability to elevate their team's room and the overall ceiling of the conference receivers. That's my opinion on that group. I think there's a lot of potential. I just don't think a lot of the guys with the most potential have shown a lot. And the guys coming back with production, I just think have a low ceiling. That's my opinion on that group. So the next group I'll probably look at is, I guess, the running backs. What is your thoughts overall? Which running backs do you like? Which teams do you think have some pretty good running backs coming back?
Yeah, I like running back a lot more than receiver. I think we have some proven commodities that also have, they have some talent, where receiver, I feel like we're kind of looking at a lot of talent, but not like a lot of proven commodities. Kind of have more guys who've maxed themselves out. I mean, sadly, I love Ty Jordan. I thought he was going to be amazing. I thought he was going to be that next Utah running back that is just big, fast, a guy who you don't really see in the Pac-12 these days, sadly, as much as he used to. Looking at running backs, I love Max Borghi. I mean, he missed a year. Love what he does. I thought he might be a guy who maybe even looked at the NFL, but I think he made the right choice coming back. I like Oregon's combo. I actually like Travis Dye a lot. I mean, obviously he's not a Ty Jordan NFL type guy, but I love what he did all year. I thought he did a great job for Oregon stepping in, especially when CJ Verdell, who was going to be their kind of like, I think everyone kind of thought was the feature back, didn't have a good year for whatever reason. Mangham at Broussard at Colorado. Obviously a ton of production, but do we know what Colorado really was? I think he's going to end up with a lot of preseason, first team teams like that, but you're going to have to really see, because he's one of those guys and that team is on the list, though Colorado fans hate me, of like, do we know like what this all means? Yeah, so I'm not sure, but I think there's a lot of nice like B- running backs that we got coming back, and like they're not quite the wide receiver group too, where I feel like you're like, these guys were good recruits. I see it. These are guys, but more running backs that flashed and had production, like Rashard White to Arizona State. But I'm like, is this like going to be a great running back, or is this going to be just a guy who's like pretty good? Austin Jones is another one. I'm not really sure. I liked him as a recruit, and he had some production, but he was just not explosive at Stanford. So I would say that with wide receivers, a lot of talent that for the most part that I haven't seen anything out of. Running backs are a lot of guys who are B minuses, but are they going to just stay at B minuses, or is anyone going to really step up there?
Sorry, I'm like coughing. I got like it's one
That's
of
all
those
good.
proverbial ticks in your throat. I'd agree with you. I think there's actually, you're right. There's a lot of production, like a lot of running backs coming back. So you got Travis Dye, CJ Verdell for Oregon. You got Sean McGrew for Washington. You got Deion McIntosh, Travis Borghi. Jeez, for Oregon State. You got Austin Jones for Stanford. You have White and Tremont for Arizona State. Obviously, the tragedy of Utah. Utah's not really returning much, but they also had TJ Pledger from Oklahoma and Chris Curry from LSU transfer in. So those are experienced backs. You have Vavel Malapai. Stephen Carr, I think, is still playing for USC. I kind of got a feeling he's hit the portal one of these days, but maybe Stephen Carr comes back. You also have Keontae Ingram from Texas that transferred into USC. So, like you said, we have some experienced running backs, but the ceiling's not there. Trying to think. Sean Dollars played a little bit for Oregon, and he's a guy that probably might be a little better than the mean. So he's a guy to possibly watch out for. Other than that, is there any other team that has a running back? I really liked White. He's an explosive big play guy. I thought he only played in 4 games, but I thought he was probably the most impressive one that I thought kind of had that next gear that you haven't seen as often in the Pac-12 in recent years. So he's probably my favorite coming back. I think I'm really with you on Colorado. Colorado's a team that they finished 4-2 and they took advantage of just the wonky COVID season. I could totally see it. I'm sorry, but I could totally. Did you say that Colorado fans hate you?
I think it was when I did the preseason power rankings and I had Colorado like 11, and they were not pleased. And I just said
but that's what I would rate
them. Like their last 2 games, like I think that's the team they were. They lost to Utah, I think, by like 17, and they played a Texas team that, granted, Colorado fans pointed out that Colorado had some players sitting out, but Texas, like their like 15 best players were like all sitting out, and they did not look like they belonged in the same field. And so it wasn't like, oh, they lost by even 17. That was like not even like a game. So I'm glad they did what they did. I thought they showed some nice things. Those wins over UCLA and Stanford looked a lot nicer at the end of the season with the way those teams kind of came together a little bit, but I also don't think they would have beat those teams at the end of the season either. So, but they were not happy with, which I think is very fair to put them. I might even put them 10th. I think I had them above WSU, which I think is totally fair. I think you have to be pretty big homer to not agree with that. Colorado has a lot of questions coming back.
Yeah, I just don't think they're very. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I know what their year was, and good job for Karl Dorrell for, he took advantage of that short season. And I think he kind of, there was some trepidation about the hire, and I think he kind of like alleviated that a little bit. But moving forwards, I'm not seeing out with that roster right now. I guess that we're now, so we've covered that. So let's just cover the offensive line in its totality. Who do you like? What do you like? What particular players do you like? Center, guard, offensive tackle. Who do you think has the best group coming back? And I think this is a 2-part question, because I think they're different. In my opinion, they're different answers. Maybe you don't have a different answer. I think there's 2 superior offensive lines in the Pac-12. And I think one has more potential, but I think another one has had more production. They have more actually guys that have proven it. But I think this other offensive line group actually has some guys that, if they play to the potential, especially what they were rated as recruits, I think they could be a top 10 unit in the nation, not just in the Pac-12. What's your overall thoughts in the Pac-12, and what specific players stand out to you?
Yeah, I don't want to sound like I'm like a broken record with everything, but I feel like there's a lot of like all right offensive lines. I have some pieces coming back that I like, but there's not going to be like Oregon 2 years ago, or, like a USC when USC was rolling, or Stanford of the heydays. There's a lot of ones where I feel like, okay, I think they're all right, but I don't really know. I think if you had to tell me to give me like a top one, I don't even know who that would even be. I think I was tempted to like Stanford more than I should. I might be crazy because I really like what they're putting together. They have young talent, but Stanford just continually in the past few years, it seems like they build up this young talent and it just doesn't go anywhere. Even on the offensive line, they started a lot of freshmen a couple years ago. So there's no real one that matches up to me with like production and overall talent, like a combo of that's really proven much to me yet. And I think like Utah was supposed to have a pretty good offensive line, and obviously they produced, but I mean, their running backs, Utah to me is always their running backs. There was a lot of guys at Washington who graded really high, but when you looked at like the PFF side of that, but I didn't jump up watching them and see like, oh, and I never saw a dominant run game from them, so I don't really have that much faith in them. So totally just like throwing it out there. I mean, I would probably say I have confidence in like Utah, Stanford, or maybe Oregon, because I think they put a big emphasis on what they're going to do there. And if they can get some of the younger, same thing as their receivers, it seems like they have some young talented guys, but you see the guys who are starting and you're like, these kind of are like the veteran guys who have been around for a while. Like, are we going to see like a Jonah Tao now guy, or guys like that step up? So that's kind of, it's kind of a lot of washes for me on the O-line.
Yeah. So to touch specifically, if you look at just the recruiting rankings, I definitely think the best unit should be Oregon. They signed 5-star Kingsley Sumatai. Bram Walden is a top 100 guy. They signed a couple other consensus 4 stars. Jonah Tenua was a top 100 guy a couple years ago. Stephen Jones is a consensus 4-star. The number 1 rated offensive tackle in the nation was Salah Almamube. TJ Bass was the number 1 rated guard his year coming out of junior college. So from just a baseline perspective, Oregon should have the best group. Now, last year was a weird season. And they had a lot of upperclassmen, they're elderly too, but they had a lot of upperclassmen leave. Obviously, Penei Sewell, the Outland Trophy winner and probably a top 10 draft pick this year. He went out, he opted out. So I think that impacted a lot of stuff. So their group was just a little bit inconsistent as a unit. I think they had guys individually play well at times. I just think as a unit, it did no particular unit in football needs to play better together than the offensive line. It's just you're crossing, you're pulling, you're blocking down, you're going over the top and cutting off a linebacker. There's just so many different things that you have to do and have to know that there could be one really damn good offensive lineman that's just dominating, but if the other 4 are kind of all over the place, you're not going to be a great offensive line as a unit. So, but I think if Oregon can play to their potential, Oregon has potential to be, like I said, a top unit, not just in the Pac-12, but in the nation. They have the guys from just a baseline perspective, blue chip guys. They've, like I said, 4 or 5 guys that were top 100 guys. Kingsley Sumatai, it was Sumatia was a 5-star. Is a 5-star. So they have the guys to play at a really high level. Will they do it? We'll see. Some of the best players are really young. That's always something that has to be taken into consideration. From a grading standpoint, by the Pro Football Focus, it is Washington, Jackson Kirkland, Henry Boulavia. I butcher names, by the way. So
That's okay.
Feel free to correct me. Victor Kern. I forgot Luke Wattenberger, the center. They have guys that are just very experienced. These guys have started 2-3 years. These guys have been consistently 70+ graders by Pro Football Focus. And I do understand what you're saying, that they haven't necessarily looked at maybe quite as impactful, but I will counter that argument with a little bit of this. Who's been the running backs? I don't think Washington's run game's been very effective, and the quarterback play hasn't been great either, and the wide receiver play. So it's maybe not made the offensive line look quite as good as it is, because for the last 2 years, when you look at how it's graded as a unit, it's been a top 10 unit nationally, and they bring back everyone. So I think Washington, for just a unit, is going to be the best unit coming into the year. And I think they have the ability to be impactful if the skill guys, they just need better play from quarterback, running back, wide receiver, a tight end if they had good play. Every year they seem to get good play on the tight end, but they just need better play. And I'm a little worried about John Donovan as a play caller, just like I was worried about Bush Hamden as a play caller. That's why he supposedly got fired, but then they hired Donovan, which I thought was a strange hire. And it was only 4 games, but I didn't see a lot of difference. It kind of looked like Washington from the year before. That's the question mark, because I think as a unit, I think it's a really good unit. I think Washington has some really good players. Are they big time NFL guys? Probably not, but they'll be NFL. I think Kirkland will be on the NFL roster. I think Bellavia will be on the NFL roster. I think Wattenberg could get on the NFL roster. So these are good guys, and they're good players, and they're experienced. And I think if they can play like they have the last couple of years, they can still be a good unit. I just don't know if the offense is going to be any good. They got to get good play out of someone else on that offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, definitely. I think
you got any more? You can.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think that's that's pretty spot on. I think, yeah, we've kind of had a thing too with a lot of positions where recently in the Pac-12 we've had those like bigger recruits come in, and they haven't like as established themselves as much as programs like kind of hoped they were. I think that's kind of like been a conference-wide problem for some of the conference's top teams, and you haven't seen it as much. And yeah, I think Washington, one thing I did notice is a random factoid is someone pointed out that Dylan Morris, I think he had like 1 sack, and it was like a 1-yard loss where he ran out of bounds. And I was like, whoa, like I would not have assumed that. So they must be good. They must have done some good pass protecting, I would have to say. And their running backs haven't been elite. And I would say the same with probably Oregon. I mean, there's a lot. Riddell's had a lot of production. Travis Dye, I loved him as a player. I thought he stepped up when they really needed him in this weird year. He was always kind of like the guy who, when they really needed to play, made it. But yeah, I think they kind of lack that playmaker running back too that might have made their offensive line look a little bit better last year, because they definitely have the talent, and I think they're going to have the focus on it as well. So I think that's pretty spot on.
Yeah. I like a couple players from Arizona State. I think the DH,
I
think he's a solid. So I think Arizona State is a team that when you look at them, if Jaden Daniels can play to his potential, if some of those young wide receivers can play better, and then you got a good guy in Tremaine, and you got a great guy in White, and you got some solid, that is a team on the offensive side of the ball that they could make noise. There's the guys there that I can see. They had a new offensive coordinator, the guy from Boise State. They're a team that maybe you'd kind of not immediately mention, that I kind of see as that kind of, like, let's just say if there's a dark horse team to win the Pac-12, I think it's actually Arizona State, and that's why, because there's some people on that side and also on the defensive side of the ball. And we'll touch on the defense. That I can see if they can put it together, them having the guys to be a pretty good team next year.
Maybe the anti-Colorado team, where I'm like, I could see them being better than what people probably think, and their record suggests. And in the weird year, I don't think they made the opposite. They didn't make the most out of it in their really, really weird year. So yeah, I think they're a team that could sink. But then again, I mean, I think I've been saying this about Arizona State for almost 20 years now. If Arizona State just puts it all together, Arizona State, then they go 7-5, and you're like, well, they're Arizona State. So
there's next year.
Yeah.
So I guess since we're done, we're almost done with the offensive side of the ball. Give me your top 3 units. So we I think we went over it pretty well. If you had to pick the top 3 units in the conference, top 3 units, top 3 teams on the offensive side of the ball, which 3 teams would you pick? We've gone through the units. So which 3 teams do you think will have the top offense in the Pac-12? And then I'll give you my 3.
Yeah, I think Oregon's still an easy choice. I think with all their struggles, even with what Tyler Shuck didn't do, they were productive. You can't take that away from them, especially on until the season got pretty late. I think USC, they're still gonna have what they have. They have some good receivers. They're gonna put up points. I don't have a worry about that. I'm gonna be a little sneaky with UCLA. As the season went on, they were a team people couldn't stop, and they don't lose. I don't think they really lose anything. So those, as you said, I think Arizona State's kind of that dark horse, but I don't trust them, and I don't trust Shannon Daniels. I think those 3 are the ones that I trust. I think no matter what, they're going to put up points. USC and UCLA, their defenses might give up 50 points a game. Oregon might have some questions at quarterback, but even the guys who are the veterans who are kind of holding off those 4 or 5-star guys, I still think they're productive. They're not going to be bad players for the most part. So yeah, those 3 seem pretty easy to me.
So you have you have UCLA, Oregon, and USC.
Yeah.
I'm going to go Oregon. They returned the 11th most production in the nation. I think it's 87. 93% production on offense. So that's a lot. And they had a top 20 offense last year in regards to efficiency. I think they're number 18. SP Plus had them like at 15. So they returned a top 20 offense. They returned 93% of the production. Like I said, they signed 12 blue chip players, including a 5-star in Kingsley Sumatai and 5 overall top 100 players. So I think talent, production, I think Joe Moorhead's a terrific offensive coordinator. I'm going to go Oregon. Number 2, I'm going to go Arizona State. I do have questions about Jaden Daniels as a passer, but he's still a dynamic athlete. He's a guy that can do a lot. White, I think, is one of the most explosive in the nation running backs, and I think he's the most explosive back in the Pac-12. And I like Bunkley Shelton. I think Wilson is a guy that has some talent. I like some of the wide receiver group. I like Ricky Pearsall. I think he's a very good wide receiver too. He's a guy that I keep on forgetting to mention, but I think he was one of the most productive wide receivers in the little bit of play they had. And I think they have some good offensive linemen. So with a pretty solid offensive line, some dynamic running backs, some solid receivers, and a quarterback that I think will be able to do some good stuff. I think they'll have a top 3 offense in the Pac-12. And then I'm going to agree with you. I think UCLA, you bring back a 3-year starter in Darian Thompson-Robinson. Britton Brown is a good running back. You also bring in Zach Carbonet, who transferred from Michigan. I think he's a guy that's going to add some to the offense. Kyle Phillips is one of the better wide receivers in the conference. And then Craig Dulcich, one of the best tight ends. I mean, he was terrific. I think he had like 200 yards against USC. So, and I think they have a really good offensive line. They returned back a lot of stars in the offensive line and a lot of guys that graded pretty hard. So, and Chip Kelly's a great play caller. Say what you want about him, and he's not necessarily had the results that a lot of people thought he would, but he's still a great play caller. He knows how to do tempo when it's need be, and they got some yards and they got some points on people this year. So I agree with you. The only difference we have, you didn't pick Arizona State. I'm really, as you can tell, I'm just not feeling USC this year, and it boils down. I don't think they have a good offensive line. They've lost by far their best offensive lineman in Elijah Vera Tucker. All their other returning starters in the offensive line are the lowest graded by Pro Football Focus offensive linemen in the conference that are returning. So they're returning a bunch of low graded players that I do not think played very well. They haven't recruited the offensive line very good. I don't think they've gotten much out of the run game. I don't love Graham Harrell as a guy that the ability to mix the run into the pass. I think he's kind of a pass-happy offensive coordinator. I think that's also part of the struggle with getting the offensive line to play downhill. They're kind of always playing up. So then when you have to turn to play downhill, I just don't think it's very effective. I don't think the running backs have been that talented. I don't think they necessarily have recruited that well at that position. I think it's going to kind of be the same kind of offense. It's going to rely on Keaton Slovis hitting some plays to his receivers, and I just don't know if this team's even as good. I don't think they're as good in an offensive line, and so I'm not buying that as a top 3. I don't even know if I'd buy it as a top 5 offense in the Pac-12 this year, to be honest with you. I'd probably take Utah over them. And if Washington could figure something out, I can't take Washington. They just haven't looked good enough on opposites. So I'll probably take Washington State, Nick Rolovich. I like Delora. I like Borgie. I like those two, Harris and the other receiver. So, yeah, I'll probably take Washington State for if I went the extra little couple. So, anyways, Oregon, UCLA, and Arizona State are my top 3. So let's head to the defensive side of the ball to finish this off. What defensive line group would kind of be what players do you like? Which groups do you like? Who do you like on the defensive side? Defensive line.
Yeah, I like some of the usual suspects as units. I like Washington, Utah, Oregon. I like throw USC in there a little bit in the mix. Maybe Arizona State might be a little sneaky. Washington's one where, Zion Tupuola-Fetui just had it in the 4 games he got, for the most part, just had a crazy year. And then they have a lot of young talent at defensive tackle who they can develop people. Those guys just have to kind of step in because they lost a couple guys with opt-outs who were veteran guys who were also on that. Utah, they don't have a bunch of names, but God, they just never stop with the same kind of guys and just being lights out. They're in a year where no one could defend the run. Utah somehow managed to defend the run. It was amazing. And they didn't have like the Star Lotolele like name players that I'm like can just point on, but they know what they're doing. Obviously, Alabama and these other than Alabama, who else could stop the run this year at times? And Utah could. And Oregon, I throw them with Washington. I think they have some young guys. They really have to figure it out. They have some young guys up there. They're bringing in on the defensive line. Thibodeau is obviously who he is, but I think they have to figure out how to defend the run before, he's a 3rd down and long guy. He's not a defensive tackle. But they have the talent to do it. Those are the groups that I like. After that, Arizona State has a couple of guys that are sneaky, who are going to be all Pac-12 type guys, but might be more pass rusher types. So yeah, I think Washington and Utah and Oregon are the easy choices on the D-line side. And after that, everyone else is kind of just shifting in different spots.
Yeah, that was a good breakdown. I for one was not very impressed with the defensive line play for anyone this year. I thought overall the defensive lines across the conference were pretty bad. Not a lot of effective pass rushers. I honestly thought UCLA had one of the better. I like that. What's the gentleman's name? He was the defensive tackle for UCLA.
Odighizuwa?
Yeah. Man, how do you learn how to say these names? I can't.
Well,
I'm like,
It's so hard with the entire conference too. Because if you have one team, you can kind of lock it in, but I would not. It's also sometimes, I would say the same thing with like transfers and stuff. Like over the years, I'll put stuff out there and be like, that backup defensive tackle like transferred out. Like last week, I'm sorry, I forgot about the Colorado backup defensive tackle. Who is only on a message board that anyone knows that he's not on the team anymore. But yeah, pronouncing players, it's hard with 12 teams.
Well, I'm a Midwest guy, so I'm gonna be honest. In the Midwest, the names are Erickson, Johnson, Nelson, Wilson. What I'm not used to the West Coast, Tulupulepe, Tui. I'm like, those names aren't very common up here. So I think that's part of my problem. I agree. If I were gonna say, and when you said Utah, they lost all their starting DL, but I thought as a whole that their DL was probably the best defensive line. It's Mike Tafua, I think I'm saying his name. Yeah. I think he was the 2nd highest graded defensive lineman in the conference. And they had a couple other guys I can't really remember offhand, but I think that they were probably the most consistent of any DL unit. And if I trust their coaching, I trust how they analyze the talent that they have and they're able to develop it. So I probably would lean them. ZTF obviously was just terrific. As a whole, though, the Washington defensive line I was a little disappointed with. They had guys like Jacob Bandis, I'm not even try the guy's name. He was a recruit from Hawaii. He was a top 50 guy. They had a top, like, Bandis was the top 100 guy, and they're highly regarded, high recruits coming out of high school. But I didn't see them last year be very productive, and I didn't think they necessarily were very impactful. Savell Smalls, I think, plays a little bit of edge too. I didn't see him do a lot. So Washington has the pieces there. I just didn't really see it. He only played 4 games, and to be honest with you, Oregon's defensive line did not play well. They had a lot of very experienced guys come in, and they just did not play well. Plain simple, they just were not very good. Kayvon Thibodeau is always a very solid player. Brandon Dorlus, sophomore, is coming back. I think he's a pretty good player, but I didn't see it last year. Can they come back? Do they have the talent? Yes. But I have a hard time putting Oregon up there just because I didn't see it last year. I just didn't think it was a good unit at all. I thought it was their worst unit on the team. Well, safety was pretty bad too. But Arizona State, Tyler Johnson's a solid player. They have another guy.
Jermaine Lowell.
Yep, there you go.
He's good. Yeah.
Yep, he's a solid player. Do they have another guy? No, that's it. But they had a couple guys, and I thought they did. Yeah, Jermaine Lowell. I thought they were decent. Mustafa Johnson from Colorado I believe he's coming back. He's a pretty good player for Colorado. But you kind of got to pick players here and there. Isaac Hodgins is not a terrible player for Oklahoma. For Oregon State. Tului Talupatua from USC has some potential. Brett Johnson from Cal has some potential. I'm trying to think of another guy it's like it literally is. You pick like a guy from each unit that can be not a bad player, but to think of each unit across the board. I mean, even like USC had Marlon Tuapolopo, Brandon Pia, and Tului. I'm terrible. You know what I'm trying to say. But they were. I mean, you could think that they would all. Marlon's probably going to be a day 2 kind of pick in the draft, but I just didn't see USC consistently on a play-by-play basis be really impactful and effective on the defensive line. So, going into next year, if you're going to ask me who I would take Utah because I trust the coaching, I trust the development, I trust that they'll get guys that play to their potential. There's no one else I can trust. I can't trust Oregon right now or Washington. I just didn't see it from the guys that they had in the roster. I just didn't see it last season. And I was not a huge fan. Washington actually hired I think they promoted a graduate assistant to their DL coach. And I thought that was kind of a unique move. I don't know if I agreed with that today, but Jimmy Lake kind of runs the defense and he's a very good defensive mind. So maybe that'll work out for them, but I would probably go Utah. Linebackers. Now I think it's a little better yet. What do you think about the linebackers coming back?
Yeah, we have some solid units coming back across the board, really. It's different than the D line where I feel like, it's just like there's some names out there. I kind of say that with the offensive line too, where it's like there's some guys I like on certain teams, but I don't really like any whole units. Linebackers, different. They have some good, there's some good linebackers. UCLA's was a little sneaky to me. There's Mitchell Agudi and Caleb Johnson, who was like a force as the season went on. Arizona State's another sneaky one. They have a lot of talent there. They have some players step up. Utah, Devin Lloyd might be the best linebacker in the conference, and he like the D line. Utah is like I trust their coaches. I trust what they do. They just plug in and they seem to be able to do it. Oregon, Noah Sewell is going to be a monster. Clearly, Justin Flo, who was hurt last year, is going to be interesting to see how they're going to bring him in. And then they have a nice little mix of some veterans in there as well. Those are the ones like Oregon State, I think, had some interesting players at linebacker. Those are going to be the ones to watch. I like Washington has one linebacker I like, Edefwon Ufoshio. But other than that, they're kind of a giant question mark. So, I think UCLA is going to be a sneaky one, but Utah, I would say the same thing as D-line. They don't have a bunch of household names, but they have one guy that you can really trust who probably to me has a good chance to be the best linebacker in the conference. Nephi Sewell, Noah, yet another Sewell is another name to throw in there. So yeah, Utah to me is going to be like D-line, the clear choice to be number one. Other than that, I kind of think UCLA, Arizona State are sneaky, and then Oregon's going to have a lot of young talent. That's probably going to sneak up there too with them, with the rest of them. And then everybody else is kind of, there's players here or there that you like, but other than that, you don't trust the whole unit.
Yeah. I mean, I just think there's a little, like, the thing is, defensive line, you can have one good play. I guess an edge guy can make a really big difference. If he's getting after the quarterback, harass the quarterback, an edge guy can be really impactful. Linebacker, one really good linebacker. Like I did really think Udon Udofushio for Washington. I thought he looked really good. I think he's a former walk-on, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he is.
And is Ryan Bowman playing outside backer, or is he playing the edge?
I feel like he's kind of a hybrid. I mean, in the day and age where it's really hard to define what someone is, but he is. And I think he's back for another guy who's back for like his 6th year.
And he's a good player. He's a good player.
Yeah.
But when he's healthy, so if Ufushio and Bowman playing back there, and you also got Savell Smalls, who's a former 5-star, and ZTF off the edge, if they can play to that potential, that's a pretty good front seven right there. But I think the question with Washington is in the interior, but I like them. Devin Lloyd, I think he's terrific. I think Nephi Sewell is very terrific. So I think you're right. I think Utah has a very solid linebacker unit. Noah Sewell, Justin Flohr, you're not going to get much higher rated than those two guys. That's a couple 5-stars right there. You also got Mesa Funa, former top 100 guy, and it's not official, but I believe there's a pretty good chance that Oregon lands Henry To'oTo'o from Tennessee. So basically he's not committed yet. But if he does land there, if he doesn't land at Oregon, he probably lands at USC. So he's going to probably be good. He's probably going to immediately be one of the top 3 linebackers in the Pac-12. And he's probably going to Pac-12, from what I hear, at least. Have you heard that?
I'd only really heard like Oregon for the most part. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, to me, no question, it would probably be between him and Devin Lloyd, who are the best linebacker coming back was wherever he signs.
I mean, if Henry To'oTo'o goes to say hypothetically to Oregon, and you got him, Noah Sewell, Justin Flohr, and Mesa Funa, that's a darn good. That's a pretty good group right there. The only other one would be Devin Lloyd and Nephi Sewell. And like I said, Washington have Ufushio, Bowman. You got Smalls. You also got Daniel Humalili. I don't know. Did he play much last year?
I think he was mostly a special teams guy, but
okay, he was a big time. He was teammates with To'oTo'o, I believe, in high school, if I'm not mistaken.
I think he was. It's Menlo Park one, Atherton.
Oh, was he? So To'oTo'o played for De La Salle.
No, so he's Palo. He's like that. Troy Franklin's same high school, I think. That one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Menlo Atherton. Okay.
Yep, Menlo Atherton.
They played the same conference, so they were rivals. They were not teammates; they were rivals, and they're still going to be rivals. But anyways, so I think a lot will. I mean, if he's going to land in the Pac-12, I'm pretty sure, at least by the sound of things. So he will make someone really good. So right now, I would probably say Utah. I would agree with you. Washington and Oregon, I think, have a lot of potential. And then Arizona State, Merlin Robertson, I think they have some solid players. Nate Landman, I believe, has to recover from the Achilles injury. He's a very good player, but an Achilles injury is very tough to heal up from. I don't know if he'll be ready. Avery Roberts is a solid linebacker for Oregon State. I think they also got another guy. Don't they have Addison Grumps? Omar Spikes, Addison Grumps too.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
So they have a solid group that would probably I'd consider Oregon State kind of underrated. So I'll probably go Utah, Oregon, Washington with potential. I don't love USC. Kenai Maiga. These names. He played very well against Oregon. I think he had one of the highest grades by Pro Football Focus for any linebacker during the season. But that was his one good game. It was really unusual. He really wasn't very good the other 5 games. I didn't think Raylan Goldforth was very consistent. They have some high-rated guys, a guy like Pai Gaete. He transferred out. That was a top 15 player coming out of high school. So, and then they got Drake Jackson. I guess Drake Jackson's kind of an edge linebacker type guy. I didn't think he played very well last year, though.
No, I was shocked. I kind of forgot about him at the end of the season. I was like, wait, I thought he was going to, and I loved him as a freshman. I thought he was amazing. I thought he was going to be their next big time, 3 years and out. Great guy, edge player guy, but he was a complete afterthought this year. Shocking.
He lost like 30 pounds and kind of moved from an edge to like an outside linebacker. And I just don't think, I think he was better on the edge with more weight on him.
Yeah.
I just think that suited his abilities better. So, so I guess I'll go Utah, Washington, Oregon, with a kind of a dark horse being Oregon State, to be honest with you. The other units, Jihad Woods is a solid player from Washington State, but I'm not seeing as a whole. A guy here and there, you can make a difference, but as a unit, I'd rank those. Okay, let's move to defensive backs. Who do you like there? Cornerback, safety. What players do you like? What groups do you like?
Yeah, I like Trent McDuffie at Washington at cornerback. I like Mikael Wright. I think he was not a Drake Jackson, but I thought he was going to have a bigger impact this year than I think he ended up having. And I like how much talent Oregon has at that unit. I don't think there's a huge standout unit this year. I think this kind of goes into one of those ones where we kind of have a lot with some nice players and pieces, but there's no outstanding unit. Arizona State could be sneaky. I think they got Evan Fields, then Jack Jones, I believe, is going to do his like 7th tour in the Pac-12 or whatever he's doing. And then their other cornerback, who I think I was surprised too, he came back. I'm doing a blank right now. But
Chase Lucas.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised he came back. So they could sneak up on you, but Oregon and Washington, I think they've accumulated a lot of talent at those spots over the years. So they're ones to watch. And obviously Jimmy Lake, they put an emphasis on, defending the pass. And I know you said Oregon safeties were bad last year, but I think they have enough talent there. I think the same thing is some of their spots where there was weirdness, and they'll have guys who come in and I think put it together this year with enough of that talent. So really like Arizona State, Washington, and Oregon, kind of the usual suspects. I would throw Utah in there as well. I don't know. They have who's the guy that they brought in, the freshman who was a big recruit? Eric Phillips. Yeah, they have some nice players that I think are probably going to step up, and I trust them. So those are kind of the units that I really see stepping up around the Pac-12. I think Oregon and Washington are the two that should be the best, because I think they've brought in a lot of talent, and they have kind of a little bit of a pedigree for definitely for Washington. I mean, Oregon, I think, is getting there with the talent they're bringing in, and I wouldn't be surprised if they make a big step next year. But ASU, Oregon, Washington.
Yeah, I mean, I really like. Yeah, Washington, it's hard to argue. Jimmy Lake's going to have good DBs while he's there. Trent McDuffie's probably the best cover guy in the conference. Kylan Gordon's a freak. You got some experienced guys in Cameron Williams and Asa Turner, and I think is it Hampton, the other corner, who's got some good plays, the long dude. I trust that Washington is going to be a pretty good unit next year. USC has some people. Chris Steele, former top 50 guy. Max Williams was a consensus 4-star. Isaac Palomai has been a 2-3 year starter. You're bringing in some young guys who are pretty highly touted. Sierra Wright from in there in Los Angeles is a very highly regarded kid. Prophet Brown, who was a consensus 4-star guy that was recruited by pretty much every big program. They got the guys. USC I do have a question always. What are you going to get from them? Are you going to get consistency? Are you going to get guys who even, like Elijah Griffin, who headed off to the NFL? He's a guy that at times was good, but at times was inconsistent. So other than Talanoa Hufanga, it's kind of hard to see consistency from USC. Oregon was not impressed with the Oregon DBs really this year. Obviously, if you can tell, I was not very impressed with the Oregon defense. As a D-line safety. I didn't think their safeties were very good. They graded pretty horrible on a per play basis by Pro Football Focus. I do think Verone McKinley is a solid player. He's coming back. He's a 2-year starter. Bennett Williams was a guy that didn't play early a lot, junior college All-American. I think he will be better next year. They also bring in Brian Addison, a wide receiver, former top 100 guy. He's going to go over to the safety position, so he's the guy over there. The guy to watch out for is Jamal Hill. He was the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Week for the Pac-12 championship game performance. I think he's probably the one with the highest ceiling. I think he's a pretty good player. He had got his feet wet. He was a true sophomore. He was not going to start going into the year. It was going to be Jevin Holland, who's one of the best nickelbacks in college football. And he early on, he made some mistakes, but the last couple of games, he was pretty good. And I think he's going to be a pretty good player. And then it's Mikael Wright. Mikael Wright is one of the better corners in the Pac-12. He's the guy that will probably be a day 2 pick. Him and McDuffie, I think, are day 2 picks probably in next year's draft. So he can really run just like McDuffie. The thing that McDuffie and Wright can do is run. And if you can run, that puts you at an advantage, obviously, at that position. So, and yeah, you mentioned Arizona State, Chase Lucas, Jack Jones, Evan Fields. I think that's a pretty solid group. I like that group, and I like Clark Phillips, and I like Vontae Davis, and Utah has some solid D-back groups. Yeah, I probably are going to pick a top 3. Washington's 1. The other ones, it's just kind of question marks. I don't know.
Yeah.
Washington's the best group in my opinion.
USC's got some talent too. As said, USC.
Yeah, they do definitely have the talent. Are they going to play to it?
You trust Utah. You
trust Utah.
I like Oregon's corners, but
They do.
safety is such a question mark. Arizona State, I feel like, is trustworthy for what they have. I don't think they're going to be like nationally relevant, but I feel like there's enough experience proven there to be like that too. Maybe Utah is up there. So I kind of like Colorado. They might have some weird senior guys who are coming back that I don't know about, but I think Colorado had some surprise talent in their secondary as well. I think Cal loses their best players at DB.
Yeah, buying them.
Yeah. So, yeah.
We're not mentioning Cal a lot, are we?
Cal's weird. I mean, if you want to take
the
award for the weirdest season, it's definitely Cal. I think a lot of people had high hopes for them, me included, and they just I think COVID hit them in a weird way that just made it so they weren't as good as they should have been, but maybe people were overvaluing certain things about them. And it was a year when you need to have offense if you're going to win college football anywhere, and they just don't have much offense. So I don't really know what when you have to outscore people, you can't win every game, like 17-14 in 2020. It was very hard. So bad year.
Yeah. I agree with you. So if you're going to take the top 3 units in the Pac-12 defensively, who would you take? Who would be your top 3? I keep on saying units. Top 3 teams. Who would be your top 3 defensive teams in the Pac-12?
Utah is no question. They're the only one I trust. Washington, as you kind of went across the board, they have good pieces everywhere. Going on total potential, I'm probably going to go Oregon again. Because as you said, interior of their D-line was a disaster last year in safety, but there's not much to go from here. So it's like you kind of about to be like with the Pac-12 a lot. You're like, Oregon's getting a lot of points for potential because you look at the other teams and you're like, well, if everything goes right, what are they going to be? And you're like, all right, they're going to be like a B-. Well, if everything goes right for Oregon, they're going to be better than that. So I give them the benefit of the doubt. I think COVID was weird for everyone. And I think I would assume whatever COVID did to me, it seemed to destroy the ability for teams to be able to defend the run across the board, unless you're Utah. Nationally too, no one could defend the run. So I'll give some teams a mulligan on that. And I'll go with talent. So yeah, those are probably the 3 to me. And I think Oregon at linebacker, especially if they bring in Toto, is linebacker and cornerback, which are pretty, and obviously defensive end, one defensive end, I guess. But they have some nice pieces there. So that I'll give them the benefit of the doubt to slip them in at kind of that 3rd spot.
Yeah, I think Utah, you just have to trust them, Morgan Scalley, and Kyle Whittingham, just his teams have always been very solid. They don't have much blue chip guys, but they're just a solid defense. Washington, I think under Jimmy Lake, you can pretty much guarantee that Washington's always going to have pretty solid. I think it's the questions right now around Washington definitely lie on the offensive side of the ball, and then. Yeah, I mean, if you let's say hypothetically here, Toto goes to Oregon blue chip competes with anyone nationally. Even when it comes to just you have a former 5-star Kayvon Thibodeau, you got top 50 guy, 5-star and Flo, 5-star and Sewell, top 100 guy Toto, top 100 guy Funa, top 50 guy Wright. I mean, you have as much blue chip talent as anywhere almost. I didn't see it last year, but. Weird year. They have a new defensive coordinator, Tim DeRuyter, who's been very good everywhere he's been. He was great at Cal with a lot less talent. He was very good at Air Force, good at Ohio. He's a short stint under Sherman at Texas A&M. He was solid. So I guess I'd go them. It's going to be them or USC. And USC, there's too many question marks on the defensive line, too many question marks in their linebacker group, and their defensive back group is their most talented unit, but even there, you're losing Talanoa Hufanga, who is the best player, the best safety in college football, and the best defensive player in the Pac-12, and that's just hard to replace. And there's guys that they have talent, but what I've seen them play, they've been a little inconsistent. I just think there's holes on USC. There's some portions of their team that I just don't think are most of the time it's been with USC coaching. I mean, they have all these blue chip guys. I'm like, how can you not have them play better? Well, I actually think this year's team, there is some talent issues at certain positions. I don't think they have great defensive linemen. They signed Corey Foreman. I think he'll be a good player, but he's one guy and he's a true freshman. Other than that, who do they really have that's a really talented defensive lineman? Same with the linebacker position. Drake Jackson was a good, and if they move Drake Jackson back to the D-line, then they have 2 good D-linemen, but then who do they have at linebacker? So they just have some question marks on that team. So yeah, I agree with you. I'd go Washington, Utah, and it'd be just based on talent. Even if they don't land Toto, they still have a very talented defense. I'll go Oregon, but Oregon was not impressive defensively last year. They were not even a middle of the road defense in the Pac-12 barely, and yeah, so that's where I think we kind of agree on that. So but I have to wrap up here in a second. So if I'm gonna put your feet to the fire, preferable who going into next year, we break down both units, top 3 teams. If you had to, as of today, top 3 teams that you could bank on. I think there's 3 or 4 top 25 teams in the Pac-12 next year. Who would they be? As of right now, you can say more. You can say 3 or 4. Who do you think is the top 25 team right now? Who do you think? Who can you comfortably say you think will not only start off in the top 25, but will probably end off in the top 25?
I think Oregon's the one guarantee that they're going to be ranked up high. I think as USC is the other one, which as we both I think don't agree, but they're going to be. Those are the only 2 I feel nationally, if we're talking about kind of perception, that are guaranteed to be top 25. If you ask me, I think Oregon's a lock to be a top 25 team in my eyes. There's just too much talent to not have something there, and they have options at quarterback. Washington, to me, they're sneaky. I think they could be a top 25 team. I think they should be, given what they showed in the weird year. Still a ton of question marks, but I think they are. I think they should be ahead of USC. Arizona State is the other sneaky one that I think you point out, and I like what their coaching staff has done and what they were doing down there. And you throw in a little wrinkle of kind of like that thing we talked about at Oregon of they have some young recruits that I think people don't realize that people who really follow recruiting out West are going to be like at a few spots. Arizona State has like a nice veteran core. They have some pieces, good coaching staff, and they could sneak up on people. Those are the ones. So I'd say Oregon, Washington, and USC are kind of like the proven. They're going to be ranked most likely, maybe not Washington though nationally. They're going to be up there. And then there's a whole cluster of like other teams that I'm like, there's things to like Utah would throw in there as well. Cause like you trust them nationally. I don't think people do enough, but they're kind of like sneaky in there. UCLA is a little sneaky there, especially as the year went on. And then ASU. I think that ASU, UCLA, Utah, little like pack. One of those teams is going to break out, and I think, if not two of them, because I feel like Utah is just Utah, and they're going to be solid, and they should be hovering around the top 25. So I'll break it down. Long story short, Arizona State or UCLA. I think one of them sneaks up on people. And I think UCLA, as you said, their ability to score points, if they can replicate what they did last year, it's going to be hard to stop them from scoring. And that's just hard to not win some football games for UCLA. So I think those are kind of the top 25-ish teams.
Yeah. I mean, you explained pretty good. I don't have very much disagreement with it. I think that actually the Pac-12 South, I think, is better next year. Yeah. Like you mentioned, I think Arizona State, Utah, USC, and UCLA. I think those four teams. I think there's a lot of parity. I think you could definitely be 7-5, 8-4, 8-4, 9-3. That's actually probably my prediction. If I was going to predict who comes out on top, and I think I already did. I did some preseason poll, or I did a prediction on here. For some reason, I think this might be the year. I think there's enough on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball. I think Arizona State ends up on top. But, when we talk through, Utah is pretty solid on that defensive side of the ball on all three levels. If they can get enough out of a Charlie Brewer and these new running backs, that's close between those two. And even UCLA with that good offense, I don't like enough of UCLA defensively, so I can see them losing too many games, 42-35. And I don't trust Chip Kelly. He hasn't had a winning season yet at UCLA, so I'm not trusting them enough. And I think USC is going to be disappointing. I think this ultimately will be Clay Helton's last year, so I'm just going to put that one out there for the university here. And then I think the North is really Oregon, Washington. Those are the two best teams. The reason why I would go Oregon, I just think they're better offensively. At the end of the day, college football is turned into the game that you have to score points. It's tough to beat people 17-13, 21-17. It's just tough. You have to be able to score some points. And I don't trust them offensively. I haven't seen enough out of any of the skill positions, quarterback, tight end, wide receiver, running back, that I just don't see them being a dynamic offense. I have not seen it. So if I've not seen it, they have some talent, but some of the talent that I've seen play hasn't played to the level. Ray Spiker was a top 100 guy, hardly done anything. Austin Osborne was a consensus 4-star, hardly has done anything. We'll see what Roman Adazzo and Jalen McMillan are made of, but I don't trust their offense, so that's why I'd lean Oregon in the North. So, yeah, that's my early prediction. I think it kind of goes in line. Obviously, when you're picking most of the best units for those teams, probably those are going to be the teams that play. I don't, you could, who knows what you could see out of Washington State, Arizona State, Cal, in the North, and then in the South, we didn't mention Colorado. Arizona could be a dark horse to win it.
No.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't hate what Jedd Fisch is doing for his coaching staff, though.
Hey, yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. Touching a little bit, like, some of these up and coming programs seem to be doing much more coaching moves than Washington is. So,
yeah,
I don't know what's going on there. Maybe they're giving up on. I think they're giving up on football in some ways. So, or Arizona, there's not much hope, but at least they're making moves. I think USC and Washington are programs that just seem to get in their own way a lot, maybe Arizona can figure out a way. Colorado can figure out a way not to do that.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's funny you say that, because Arizona, Don Brown, he's been a top 10 defensive coordinator for years. They had Teddy Bruschi as part of their staff. I mean, that's an interesting hire, guy with a lot of experience. Just some good high. Jimmy Doherty, I think, has been he's been a guy that's been around for a while. There's been some solid hires from him, and I agree with you. Washington had kind of an interesting defensive coordinator move. I thought that was, but I mean, Lake is the defensive line, so I don't really worry that much. But I really didn't like Donovan last year in the offense. I just did not get that hire, especially when your biggest rival goes and hires Joe Moorhead. I mean, he took over for him. That was the guy when Donovan got fired at Penn State. Moorhead was the one that turned them into a top 5 offense. I just that was one of the funnier, like literally hired the guy that got fired. But anyways, well, dude, it was awesome talking. Man, I'm gonna have you on again. Yeah, I'm gonna have you come on again. We can chit chat, talk about. I'm always down to talk Pac-12. I'm excited. I just want the Pac-12 more than anything to get back to, just being really relevant. And how that starts is by winning big games. That's by Washington beating Michigan, Oregon beating Ohio State, which will be very tough in Ohio State. I don't know who else is in the early season games, but those are the first 2 I can think of. And then making the college football playoff, making it. Yeah, and being competitive. That's just my goal for the Pac-12. And I think Oregon probably is the team that I think has the roster that has the capability, if they play up to their potential, most likely to make it. But Washington has some good pieces. They just have to get more out of their offense. And USC, if they ever got a really good coach in there, they can go back to contending for college football playoff spots and consistently being a Pac-12 champion. But until they do that, it's just really hard. I mean, according to the team talent composite, last 6 years, team talent composite started in 2015. USC's had the best roster per baseline talent 6 straight years. And they've won 1 Pac-12 title. That's all, 1. And they've had 1 top 10 finish. I just, a coach that has had that much talent and has not utilized it in the way that, and it has utilized it in the way he has, and it's just not been many times very impactful. He's had 5 and 7, 8 and 5 years with that talent. I just don't know how he's going to turn it around. I'm just surprised he's still the head coach, to be honest with you. So,
yeah, it's insane.
Do you have any last words, man, before you head off?
Not too much. I mean, we're going on that point. I mean, it's cliche you kind of hate, but until USC starts to be USC, it's going to be hard for the conference as a whole to really, even back in, we were talking earlier about the early 2010s when Oregon and Stanford were flying as much as you possibly can, but you need USC to kind of, even back then, what if USC would have been as good as they should have been? How impressive would the conference have been? And yeah, we need that. I mean, Oregon needs to fill potential. Washington needs to get fulfill potential a little bit, and then get those upstart programs like Arizona State, and to fulfill the potential. And we'll be back to having more fun, national relevance to watch, and hopefully not losing almost every big recruit from the Western region to other conference, to Ohio State, Clemson, and Alabama. And we'll be having more fun, and that'll be great.
And at least if they do leave, they transfer portal their way back afterward. You are seeing Zach Carbonate.
You're seeing a little bit of that. Yeah, you're seeing a little bit of that. And I think we'll continue to see a lot of that. I mean, I'm a West Coast guy, born and raised. I lived up and down the coast. And it's interesting to see all these guys leave and go out to these places, even if it's for 3 to 4 or 5 years. I'm interested to see how now we're seeing so many leave, if how many are going to end up coming back. So hopefully we get some more to stay.
Yeah, it's surprising. Yeah, because from the West Coast, have you ever had a desire to veer out, or you're like, I'm good?
No, I mean, I went from Washington State to LA, and I've pretty much, I've only visited a little bit back east and to the South and the Midwest a bit, but I think it'd be pretty hard for me to leave. If nothing else, then sports are really late, or on really late. I mean, the Midwest. I go to bed early sometimes, so yeah, it's I don't know if I could hack that more than anything.
No, yeah, I mean, I remember when I lived out there, it just threw me off because my whole life I was living in the Midwest and in the South, and I was all of a sudden it's like college football at 9 a.m. I'm like, whoa,
it's wild. Yeah, NFL games at 10 a.m. Yeah, it's nice if you want to get to bed early though.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. No, I got used to it. I was like, oh, it's kind of, I don't have to wait till 1. Like in the South, it's really bad. Like I live in the Southeast. And so it was like 1 o'clock for 12, 1 o'clock for NFL, 12 for
Mhm.
college football, and then they're not even half the time the games aren't any good. So the games that are really good are like at 9 o'clock at night.
Yep.
So it's
I
like,
don't know
oh
how that
man.
works. It's amazing.
All right, dude. Well, thanks for having me
Yeah.
on. Thanks for coming on, and I will have you on again. We can talk, prior to the season, talk about how the season's going to go. All
Appreciate it. Yeah. Great time.
right, have a go, man.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.